Hello and welcome. My name is Matt, and this is Mind Blown, a comprehensive show bringing you clarity, comedy, and counterbalanced commentary. You're watching the video or you're listening to the podcast of the show. My name's Matt. I'm super excited. This is my very first show. Thank you so much for being here. I'm stoked. This is going to be a lot of fun, especially this topic. It's fun, and we're going to have fun with it, but it is a weighty, difficult topic, very broad. It's huge. It's hugely important too. So, as you saw in the intro, that is conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theory, breaking down the narrative. That's the title of this discussion. It's going to be different from what I envision this show to be as far as format. I'm more going to have a variety of different news stories that are recent within, a week or so, or going back into history as needed to make points and whatnot. But it's going to be more of a news and commentary show, but we'll see. This is just the first episode. We're going to see where it goes. Today, a singular, in-depth focus. I hate to use the phrase, but we're going to go down the rabbit hole for this one into conspiracy theory land. But the focus on conspiracy theory. This is going to be a definitive guide not just breaking down their narrative, the mainstream narrative, but understanding it in its own right. Really clearly understanding it because it's so distorted and deceptive. The definition, the meaning that they're pushing on this phrase, conspiracy theory, a neutral phrase, right? So I want to come up with some sort of hashtag or something if you see in the media a pushing of the narrative that you're going to learn about in this discussion. You can share back with this. This can be sort of a reference to kind of a measuring stick to hold up against the mainstream narrative, okay? So I was thinking something like CT narrative or something that I'll share with this. If you have any ideas or if you come up with your own hashtag to share this, let me know in the comments. So anyway, let's begin this discussion. So conspiracy theory, breaking down the narrative. Notice first thing is the title of this talk, conspiracy theory, is in quotes. Quote unquote, conspiracy theory. The very definition of this phrase is very much in question. And there's a lot of problems and intricacies that we're going to look at with that. Now, the narrative part that I talk about, breaking down the narrative, that is the mainstream narrative. The kind of the bulk of power, the megaphone held by the bulk of power and influence in the world, especially, from the U.S., the Western world especially. That's where I live in the U.S., so it's kind of focused from that perspective, okay? And what we have with the narrative, basically, as we're going to see in this discussion, you're going to hear words starting with D a lot, but it's a distorted, deceptive narrative. Very distorted and deceptive. The narrators are a big part of the discussion here. So we're going to be talking about conspiracy theory, but the conspiracy theorists, traditionally, professionally, the ones that are the conspiracy theorists, who, if they're doing their jobs right, we don't really have conspiracy. They're the law enforcement, intelligence officials, and investigative reporters, journalists. Traditionally, those are conspiracy theorists. But are they the conspirators? They're the narrators. Are they also the conspirators? What is going on with this? What is going on with this? And ultimately, too, where we're going with this discussion, we're going to get a window into the workings of our world. it's a great topic to really get some clarity about what's really going on politically, geopolitically, and in regards to basically like good and bad. It's pretty it's pretty interesting what we're going to see here today. Totally, it's totally going to go against the grain of what's currently being promulgated in the mainstream media. So let's begin now with, we're going to do a little slideshow about this. This is going to give you a little taste of the narrative. All right, so let me frame this with a few questions. What do you think the meaning of this phrase is, conspiracy theory? Just a rhetorical question. Another one, and I think I'm going to have a poll about this on my Twitter. So check it out. When I release this, and within a week of it being out, I'm going to have a poll. You can probably look up the results if you're seeing this later than that. But I'm going to have a poll about, the what's worse? What's worse? And think about this for yourself right now. Conspirators or conspiracy theorists? Which one is worse? Remember, all crimes involving two or more people, basically, they all start with a conspiracy, okay? So, what's worse, conspiracy theorists or conspirators? What's worse, conspiracies or conspiracy theories? And we can put that in two different questions, or I don't know how I'm going to design it yet. I'm just, recording the first episode now. So, we'll see how that comes out in the poll. Check it out. Let me know what you think. And keep that in mind as we watch this. So without any further ado, here we go. Let's take a look here. So, buying into conspiracy theories can be exciting. That's what makes them dangerous. Dangerous. And there you go with the catchphrase there. Dangerous. All right. And that's from The Conversation. We're going to be seeing a lot of this outlet. How dangerous are conspiracy theories? Again, conspiracy theories are dangerous.
Dangerous.
Dangerous. Even if very few people believe in them. All right. So let's keep looking here. Conspiracy theories are dangerous, even if they don't affect behavior. The Washington Post. Oh, by the way, that was the Conversation again. So notice before we move on, they've got, I think this is let me count them, 1, 2, 3, 4 different articles with dangerous in the very title itself. Okay, and there's many more. We'll talk a little bit more about this outlet and that particular thing in a minute. But here's WAPO, the Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness. Conspiracy theories are, you guessed it, dangerous. Something, whatever. You get the idea. What is this? NPR, more dangerous and more widespread. And hold on a sec. So this is, again, from NPR in a special series, Untangling Disinformation. You're going to see a lot about disinformation and misinformation being basically lumped into the meaning of conspiracy theory. It's part of the agenda here. So here's an interesting one. UNESCO, a UN body, UN representing the governments of 193 some nations now, is it? I'm not sure exactly how many, but the UN putting out this campaign, Think Before Sharing, hashtag Think Before Sharing, stop the spread of conspiracy theories. Not stop conspiracy and crime, but no, conspiracy theories, which arguably draw attention to conspiracies. They're not investigations. We're not going to give them more credit than what they deserve, but they're not conspiracies. They're not crime. But again, look at this rhetoric. They can fuel violence and violent extremist ideologies. Now, conspiracy theories, not pathologies, psychological pathologies, mental failings, not moral failings, not racism, prejudice, person's past experiences, trauma, pathologies, all these different things. No, conspiracy theories are going to fuel those. Not even beliefs, they say, but theories, okay? And again, here, conspiracies, in the opening paragraph, conspiracy theories can be, you guessed it, dangerous. So here's from The Economist. Conspiracy theories are dangerous. You guessed it. Dangerous. Oh, my. And, here's a new thing. Here's how to crush them. Crush conspiracy theories. They're so dangerous. This is ridiculous. Truth Hurts, a little segment from Vice World News. Why conspiracy theories are, you guessed it, dangerous. So the narrator here says, so as easy as it is to laugh at conspiracy theories, the dangers they represent aren't just limited to inspiring random bits of terrorism? Wow. Okay, so lumping it together with terrorism is actually something we're going to see a lot of. All of the worst things you can imagine are being lumped together with this neutral phrase. But let's continue. When it comes to science, she says, they actually threaten the continued existence of advanced human civilization on Earth. Wow, that's dangerous. That sounds dangerous, doesn't it? Very, very dangerous. Conspiracy theories. Not nuclear war, not a meteor strike, a giant asteroid, not famine, not the next plague or whatever. Conspiracy theories are ultimately what's going to do us in. Okay, look at how over the top this rhetoric is. Look at how over the top, completely crazy. They fall all over themselves in the narrative to basically paint conspiracy theories in absolute terms as bad. Okay? Conspiracy theories equal bad. Okay? Dangerous. They equate it to violence, extremism, such and so forth. That's the basic narrative. And most of the time they're speaking in absolutes, which is extremely problematic, extremely illogical. We'll get to all that. It's basically extremely inflammatory language and rhetoric that they're using to frame this narrative. It's patently obvious. Once you use this discussion to measure against their narrative, and you're going to see the absolute stark difference. We're going to show it in charts and stuff too. Okay, so conspiracy theories are bad, equal bad. What about conspiracies, though? Aren't conspiracies bad? They never mention, they never talk about, the world has too many conspiracy theories. Here's what we can do about it. You don't see articles like that. So this idea that the theories are bad and kind of ignoring the conspiracies and the conspirators, it's like the 1984 newspeak or doublethink of Orwell. In so many ways, they flip this idea of conspiracy theory on its head. They totally flip it on its head. It's backwards, reversed. It's this like what Orwell talks about, this doublethink. And they're going to do it in more than one way. We're going to talk about more ways that they've done this. And they've gone to great, great lengths to do this. This is a multifaceted discussion we're going to have with many different breakdowns of how they frame this narrative. The 6Ds, as I refer to them as. And I want you to keep in mind this is going to be a good mnemonic device for when you run across propaganda in the future. These articles are everywhere. We're going to see a lot of them, but the mainstream narrative about conspiracy theories is very prolific, has been for 6-7 years, very prolific. So important discussion, timely discussion. So this buzz phrase, conspiracy theory, has had so much garbage piled onto it. It's like an onomatopoeia of ideas. It is just charged, so charged. They conspire around this phrase. It's really, there's nothing like it. This is a very, very charged, loaded terminology, to say the least. So it's like a Frankenstein phrase. What they've kind of lumped and dumped together with this phrase, as we'll see in this discussion, it's made it so it's very difficult to unpack. We have to unpack all of this stuff, and it's a mindfuck of propaganda, really. It's going to take us a while to do this. We're going to tread methodically and know that there's an awful lot of confusion around this topic. So we're going to tread slowly, carefully, and methodically, and we're going to break down this narrative. All right, so in doing so, let's start with a contrast to what we've seen so far. This conspiracy theories are dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. A contrast to that is my idea that conspiracy theorizing is an absolutely normal thing. It's absolutely normal. It's a part of just predicting people's actions and intentions. And that's to rationally make our way through a very crowded and, yes, often dangerous world. So conspiracy theories are more of a response to danger, which again shows you how they kind of flip this idea on its head. It's a response to danger. So it's really backwards to hear this repeated narrative that conspiracy theorizing is dangerous. It's the opposite. Again, that's part of the narrative that they're pushing. Now I can go even a step further to say that their narrative is itself dangerous, because it's what they've done and what they're doing is really stigmatizing conspiracy theorizing, really stigmatizing it. And it's unfortunate because we're left with, we're left without any recourse. There's a gap. They leave just a gaping hole in our language too. We'll get to that, but it's more than that. It's symbolic, and it's actually really harmful how this is narrated through the mainstream. So let's think about it this way. I think conspiracy theories are essentially good. Essentially good. The approach that we should have to any given conspiracy theory needs to be neutral. The approach. Now, ultimately, we can judge, different ways, but essentially, conspiracy theories are good. And look at the simple facts in this regard. So a conspiracy, by definition, it's secretive and it's a plan. So there's a kind of a planning or intent stage or idea behind it, secrecy, and involving more than one person, so 2 or more people. So you can think of a conspiracy as kind of secrecy in the dark, right? Usually it means wrongdoing too. A conspiracy can be something good. However, that's secondary to its main definition, which we're going to use here, by the way, that a conspiracy is something bad. For instance, the good idea is you can conspire to throw somebody a surprise birthday party. That would be a good thing, but because there's secrecy involved, most of the time what you get with conspiracies is bad. And for simplicity's sake, we're just going to define it as bad. Theorizing, second part of the definition, theorizing is an idea. Theorizing is an ideological action. So we're thinking, theorizing, having ideas. Ideas traditionally are associated with light. So we've got shining ideas or light on secretive actions. Conspiracy theories, thus, is a way of exposing conspiracies. It's very, very simply, in all kind of ideological constructs, it seems like a good thing. Even though I will say that conspiracies themselves, because they're bad, it's like, well, I would prefer not to have to have conspiracy theories to begin with. In that respect, yeah, it's bad. We wish we didn't have to conspiracy theorize, or we wish we didn't have conspiracies and our response to them, whatever you want to call it. That's unfortunate. And then conspiracy theories, like I said before, you can't put too much stock in them. They're theories. They're not the investigation. They're not, the ultimate end to the chain that it's part of, right? Anyway, I think it's just bizarre how negative the connotation of this phrase has become. It's really, really bizarre especially when those who are pushing this narrative, again, are the professional conspiracy theorists, and they frequently conspiracy theorize. While at the same time, out of the other corner of their mouth, they're saying, no, conspiracy theories are bad, they're dangerous. So it's that doublethink, that newspeak again. Now, conspiracy theories, they can be weaponized, they can be mistaken. They can also, again, help inspire investigation and solve conspiracies. So I think we should approach it neutrally. Conspiracy theories are context dependent. It's common sense. They can be bad, they can be good. Let's look at some charts here. So, types of conspiracy theories: completely true, ranging on a spectrum to completely false. They can be partially true. They can be multifaceted. Many of them are. There's different parts that are true. We can't throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. Okay, so other spectrums of consideration: poorly evidenced, well evidenced, illogical to logical, irrational to rational. All those kind of meanings are kind of almost the same, some of them, but you get the idea that you can describe these in different ways other than negative. A lot of different ways that we can describe conspiracy theories. They're context dependent. So, and think again about the idea of the intelligence agencies who are kind of in bed with the mainstream media and the media itself. The traditional professional conspiracy theorists are the ones saying that it's bad. That's totally ass backwards. It's totally flipped on its head. They are saying that conspiracy theories are ipso facto bunk, that they're bad, dangerous. Conspiracy theorists are criminals and terrorists and extremists, and they're associated with violence. And, well, wait, when are they going to flip that mirror on themselves? There's no balance in this conversation. I think you are probably catching up on how distorted this topic is. This is the mainstream narrative. Conspiracy theories, completely false, poorly evidenced, illogical, irrational. This is the reality. They're actually, it's very context dependent. This one, XYZ conspiracy theory, may be fairly well evidenced, although not very well investigated. Beneficial because if it's, it looks like it could be pretty plausible, so it can stop a conspiracy, right? There's rationality and logic there. But this one, ABC conspiracy theory, on the other hand, as an example, we're going to call it the ABC conspiracy theory, contrasted with our well-evidenced XYZ conspiracy theory. But the ABC one is very poorly evidenced. It's illogical, irrational, incoherent, implausible, almost completely false. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at. It's crazy how deceptive and distorted this narrative is. So here we're still in an overview, still looking at kind of an overview of this discussion. I want to talk a little bit about the history of it. We've gone from the idea that conspiracy theories are kind of crazy, even kooky. We'll talk about this film in a second, but going from that idea to dangerous, it's a definite shift in the narrative. But altogether, even from the 60s, basically when this narrative developed, it's been, conspiracy theories essentially have been labeled as bad. So a little history here. Lance DeHaven Smith wrote about the term conspiracy theory not being first coined or first used, but the first time it was, I think, weaponized was what he found through FOIA requests and wrote about here in this book, Conspiracy Theory in America, about how the CIA actually instrumentalized the use of this term in the pejorative. Shortly after his expose here, shortly after the CIA kind of released these memos, the New York Times jumped on board, and Time magazine was really instrumental in the CIA's kind of domestic propaganda. But the New York Times published like 4 pieces shortly after they responded to the Warren Commission. This was after JFK's assassination and the Warren Commission report. So, they followed suit. The New York Times did, and it was just downhill from there. Project Mockingbird. And now just out in the open, the CIA is heavily involved in the media. But that's kind of the term has always been, I think, a thing of focus for basically conspirators, right? If you think about it. Well, we'll get to that. So my first experience with conspiracy theory and conspiracy theories, I remember the Mel Gibson film from '97. I was only 17 when it came out. Julia Roberts, Mel Gibson. So he was always kind of the eccentric but likable, kind of childish, unlikely superhero, especially in this film, a kooky conspiracy theorist. But that's kind of my first experience with it. And what's interesting is his life kind of paralleled what happened with conspiracy theories. So we went from kooky to then, Mel gets arrested and there's some information coming out about him being anti-Semitic. And he was most recently seen saluting Trump at some event. That's the last I heard about him in the media, though. And he was thus associated with the right wing. And that's kind of where the narrative is going with conspiracy theory. It's being associated politically. It's taking on, the dangerous aspect as opposed to kooky and racist associations that they're making. So interesting how that happened with him. Now, another thing that really got me started with this topic is I kept seeing these articles from the conversation pop up when I got onto the Firefox browser, and they have something called Get Pocket. Some of you may be familiar with it if you've used Firefox, but they recommend articles, and I kept seeing conspiracy theory related articles, and this outlet has a lot. And they're the ones where, if it's not in the title, it's in the first few paragraphs, they use the word dangerous. And it's like, wow, what a pattern of kind of negativity surrounding this issue. And so, and look at this the conversation here. I decided, and this is what we're going to do a lot. We're going to look at sources, kind of trace them a little bit, find out about who the narrators are for this narrative. So the conversation, partners and funders, we find, a lot of universities, they have like technology partners, members, funders, founders. Those are their categories of, say, the partners and funders. Founding partners, right? Funders, technology partners, members. So those are a few categories that they have. But here, in a category all its own, and they don't say it, but they helped to found this basically propaganda rag, the conversation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Interesting, right? So you trace the sources, and there's Gates. And why would his outlet, that in a category all its own, not only providing financial support, but also providing editorial direction, strategic partners, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they're instrumental in this piece. And do you not see maybe a conflict of interest with Mr. Gates and conspiracy theories? Okay. James Corbett, I highly recommend his documentary about Bill Gates called "Who is Bill Gates?" But this guy is wallowing in conspiracies. Conspiracy theories surround him. Yes, some that are very kooky and illogical, but some that are logical and rational. And, we can't, we have to take each one in context. But this conspiracy turned out to be absolutely true. It turned into a crime. It's no longer a conspiracy about Jeffrey Epstein and what he was involved in. So keep that in mind. Another thing I want to talk about here is the consistency in the narrative is striking. All throughout the mainstream media, we're going to see this consistent narrative. And compared to this presentation, you're going to see how wildly divergent their narrative is from a clear and comprehensive perspective of what this phrase is, what it means, and how we can and should be using it. So it's hard to appreciate how consistent this is until we get to the end of the discussion. But so I want to point out, though, even though it's consistent, it's not I don't want to give the impression of this overarching conspiracy. This is not a meta-conspiracy. I'm going to use the phrase confluence of influence a lot. That's really what this boils down to. The singularity of the narrative has to do with a confluence of influence, and it is very pointed. The confluence of influence is very connected, but that has a lot to do with the realms of finance, as we'll see. Okay, but it's not a conspiracy. It's a confluence of influence. It's the way that money has been consolidated in our world. We're going to talk a lot about that. But BlackRock and Vanguard are going to be brought into this discussion. So what we see here from the outset is a red flag. Just the way they've just gone over the top and flipped everything over to do this, people don't buy it. People are calling bullshit on the narrative about conspiracy theories all the time. I think this is the first time it's going to be, really broken down to this extent. But they are falling all over themselves so much to push this negative idea of conspiracy theory that it becomes apparent that what they're doing is actually they're enabling conspirators. They're the mouthpiece of power And how did power get to be where it is in this world? Unfortunate, and there's an unfortunate truth here. The unfortunate truth is that the sociopaths tend to find their way to the top. And the conspirators end up being in the top. And we know that the government, the power centers, the big corporations, they are certainly no stranger to conspiracies. Everywhere in the halls of power. So this is what I've come up with, this hashtag conspirator enabling propaganda. That's what we're seeing in the mainstream media. Keep that in mind. It's a huge red flag what they're doing. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. They're actually supporting the notion of a conspiracy. They're part of a conspiracy. It's like a meta conspiracy here that we're dealing with. That's why I call conspiracy theory the onomatopoeia of ideas. They conspire around this phrase and actually hide the conspirators in this narrative. They're hiding, conspirator enabling propaganda. So we'll see if this catches on or anything. Let's take a moment now to talk about the importance of this discussion. All historical atrocity, everyone, all historical atrocity can be traced back to conspiracy. They conspire. Nazism was a conspiracy. All genocides, if it involved more than two people and they planned it in secret beforehand, it was a conspiracy. So we have to have ways to guard against conspiracies. We have to have open debate, discussion, and discovery. Okay, we need to research, investigate. We need to debate and discuss in formal settings. We have to listen and speak and critically think. All of these things together. That's not their narrative. This is what we need to do to guard against things like this, historical atrocities. It's very important now, very important all the time for us to be vigilant and to be able to have the tools and the language to talk about it. But they're skewing the very language that we use to talk about this kind of stuff. The media used to be, a long time ago, it used to be the fourth estate, the watchdogs, the check to keep power in check, right? Not anymore. They are the mouthpiece for the elite, for the power centers. They meet in secret, routinely in different organizations to talk about the agenda. And you see the agenda, the singularity of the agenda. Again, it's not an overarching conspiracy. It's a confluence of influence. But what we see is a united agenda, and that united agenda is very much in contrast to the people at large. It seems to be a totalitarian type of regime run by a wealthy elite, an oligarchy, going closer and closer towards a totalitarian type of oligarchy in the way things are moving. But therefore, it's very important for the people, us now, to be the conspiracy theorists. The conspiracy theorists are the ones that go up against the conspirators. So you see how transparent it is in their narrative. When they go up against the conspiracy theorists, they're playing the role of the conspirators. Now, we can talk about weaponized false conspiracy theories that are spread, and they are spread through the media as well as through, ordinary people. Some are, mistaken but well-intentioned. We'll talk about all of the intricacies in this discussion, but I'm going to give you the tools to combat the narrative, and essentially the goal here is to combat conspiracies, to be more vigilant, to have more justice, have more truth, have more clarity in our world. Let's inspire that. So also about this discussion, before we get to the first chapter, we'll do an overview of how it's set up, but I want to talk about how popular this topic has become with a little example. So I started doing Google alerts, and I get alerts for conspirator articles and conspiracy theory articles with those phrases and terms. And there's a guy named Joseph Usinski, I believe, and he was talking about back in, I think it was around 2014, if I remember correctly. No, about 2011, I think, when he was doing his talk. I think he did his talk in 2018. He said 7 years ago or so he was getting Google alerts, and he got, a few hits a day about conspiracy theory related articles. When he gave the talk, he was talking about hundreds of articles that he would get every day. Now it's several dozen articles a day. There's quite a few every day, more than conspirator, but there's a lot of discussion about it. And there's a lot of jokes, too, about how conspiracy theories are coming true. Every 3 months, that's the window from when it's a conspiracy theory to, a crime like spying or malfeasance of some sort by, corporations or media figures or the media or, government or some sort of entity. So I'm here to set the record straight. Okay, so that's our introduction. Not quite. Let me show you the topics here. The topics that we're going to look at, if I can find them here. Oh, no, that's... Yes. So we're going to be looking at the way they redefine the narrative, the way people are identified, people are diagnosed, they double deal, they dictate what can and can't be said, and they disregard so much. We're going to look at what they're disregarding as well as the narrative itself, so what they're pushing out, what they're holding back, right? And some of the stuff about what they're disregarding is most important of all. So without any further ado, let's begin here with diagnose. Sorry, not diagnose, redefine. Redefine is the first category that we're going to look at today. So